You start.
Started.
Right, so I'm going to go ahead and record this because I sent out a survey to my own students, and overwhelmingly, I'm not going to show the responses on here, but I had a lot of students say they want something like ASAP. The option was ASAP, or even as soon as like next week. Most students were saying they want to see something from me about either period review, study, DBQ writing skills, something like that, ASAP. So I'm going ahead and doing this now. As of the time I'm writing this, or as the time I'm recording this based on a webinar we had last night with AP College Board about what the exams would look like. I have not yet received the email that they said would come today on this purpose. But I know a lot of people are already freaking out on the AP Euro teachers. People are talking about what's this going to look like. I know I'm hearing from students like, oh my God, what's it going to look like? How are we going to do this, study for it? So I want to talk about how I would handle this. So first off, said calm down. I want to talk about the purpose of why you take an AP history class versus academic or honors history class would be. AP history class is supposed to be you learning about history as a historian. Whereas academic or honors should be more like just, you learn basic facts or story. So in AP, you're supposed to look at a wide variety of sources. We're supposed to be looking at just a few primary sources. We're supposed to be learning about history as though you were a historian. Like if you're in an AP science class, you're learning about science like a scientist. So with that in mind, that is the purpose of what the class is about. The DBQ, I'll tell you as a history major, I think the DBQ of all the essays we write in AP Euro probably reflects the skills of a historian most. It is also, coincidentally, probably the least content-based, but you're going to take one thing, and for instance, the sample I have here is the one about the 30 Years' War, and you have to think about that as a historian would. You have to consider multiple perspectives on the war, and you have to ultimately reach a conclusion that if you were taking an academic or honors history class even, that conclusion may already be reached for you. You have to reach that conclusion for yourself in AP history classes. So when I put out on my own survey, what did you guys want to study now that we're home, COVID-19, what do you want to go over? A lot of people are saying they want to go over the periods. They want to do content review. And so what I want to ask here, and what I get down to was skills, not material. I gave in my AP Euro class 2 DBQs in class and a take-home DBQ. So what I want you to think about is every time you did that DBQ, how much of that was content-based? How much did knowing the textbook help you? So I'm not trying to say don't study the history. What I am saying is, should that be your primary focus? All right. What they told us last night is they are screening the questions that they are going to give you guys against Google, there's like 5 or 6 different authors, of which most AP teachers go to McKay or Spielvogel for AP Euro. They're scanning the textbooks, making sure that like the answer to that question is not specifically in the textbook. Since this is going to be administered at home by you without a proctor, it's going to be very, very, if College Board does their due diligence the way they say they're doing, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to just Google the answers. And it's going to be very, very difficult for a straight page of the textbook to answer this question they're going to give you. So what you really need to focus on is the skills. You need to focus on how do you write? How do you develop a thesis? How do you use documents? How do you analyze a document? In my class, at least, that's what a lot of my journals were kind of hinting towards. Like, could you take and analyze a quote? Could you do this properly? It was supposed to be building up the skills to answer questions like this. So with that in mind, I'll probably do something more like this later, but I want to talk about, based on what I know today, how would I, knowing what I know as a college graduate now, if I were in your shoes and I had to take this, what would I do? So I'll give you some example based on an experience I had in college. I had at least 2 professors do this. Poke around, you'll probably find somebody else who did too. They would tell you could bring an index card to the test. They may even give you the index card. And then you would find people who would manage to write on this one index card what you could write on this standard sheet of printer paper. Front, back, margins. I mean, there were some experts in writing small. And they would bring that to class, and they would spend so much time looking at that index card that I think they didn't spend their time thinking about what the test actually said that was sitting in front of them. So this test is going to be open note, basically. I mean, they're giving it to you at home. They have no way to make sure you're not Googling right now. They're writing the test with this in mind. So you could have all your notes. You could print out a bunch of things online, but you've ultimately got to submit this in, I want to say the time period is 45 minutes. So I want to ask you to ask yourself, how much time do I have to look at these things? And if you spend all of your time studying a bunch of notes you laid out for yourself, you're not going to have time to actually write. So what I would lay out in front of me, and what I've got if my camera pans down, I tried to print these, but my printer, I call it number 2. I call it number 2 because it's a piece of, it's not printing very well. So step 1 is get a better printer, but I'll pull up on my computer now what I actually was attempting to print. I got this straight off the AP Euro document that's online. If you Google like AP Euro course and exam description, you can find a 200 some odd page document. One page, I want to say it's like page 28, has the themes of the course. And that's what I attempted to print here. I would lay out the themes of the course in front of me on a sheet of paper or off to the side somewhere. Like I'm sitting here at my kitchen table right now. I would lay them out to the side somewhere for myself to reference if necessary. What I may do, I looked over AP course records, and what I might make for myself on this is just maybe a half page each of just what are the big concepts and themes from units 1 through 7. Remember, only units 1 through 7 because College Board has at least told us that periods 8 and 9, or units 8 and 9, period 4, will not be covered on this year's AP Euro exam. So focus on that early part of history. Everything up to World War I, basically. There's another thing that I gave my students, if my camera woman can pan back to... I sent this little picture out. I don't know how well it's going to show up on that, but I can post it on my class website for you. Species, and it just basically goes through what the context would look like anyway. Maybe if I was smarter, I'd be doing this through like a screencast or something. The only thing that may help you in period 4 this year, and I know AP did some period 4 review. Let me scroll up and show you what the sample, and this is on that course and exam description, by the way. So this is what the AP document would look like. Like I said, if I was smart, I'd be screencasting. So the document-based question. Evaluate whether the 30 Years' War was fought primarily for religious or primarily for political reasons. Of the recent AP Euro DBQs I've seen, let me just go ahead and tell you what my hack personally would be. I have not seen many where you do not need to address both of these. So a thesis for this may look something like the 30 Years' War was fought for both religious and political reasons. You might say the 30 Years' War was fought primarily for religious reasons, but political reasons were also a strong factor. The reason you need to do that, like I said, of the recent DBQs I have seen personally, the documents they give you usually can be categorized. This is a 7 document. What they're telling us is that they are going to give us a 5 document DBQ. You're likely going to be a 3-2 or maybe 2-2, and one document's kind of a middle of the road between whatever they give you. You need to be able to categorize the documents first before you write your thesis. So just, I'm not even necessarily basing on this one, but let's say documents 1, 3, and 5 support religious reasons. Documents 2 and 4 support religious reasons. You need to be able to categorize that. Not necessarily even which one has the most, or which way most documents seem to lead. Like I said, you need to make sure you address both in your thesis. That should get you 1 point. The reason I would lay out themes, and remember, you need to start looking at themes, and there's also a page on skills. Because you need to be able to look at, if we look at what we need to do in our DBQ, and I'll highlight your history for knowing it, describe a broader historical context. this is where knowing big picture stuff might help you. If it's 30 Years' War, you probably definitely need to talk about the Reformation. You need to be able to talk about what the Reformation was. How did Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation lead to the events that ultimately set up the 30 Years' War? You need to be able to describe that. And that's where I think if you do a good job of making a brief overview of periods 1, 2, and 3, that could really help you set up how do I find my historical context. That may also help if we scroll back. Use at least one piece of specific historical evidence beyond that found in documents. This might also be another spot where knowing your content will help you. And that might be a spot where, like I said, having something laid out that just goes over the big picture stuff from each unit. Beyond that, I don't see a whole lot where just knowing facts and figures is going to help you on the DBQ. And remember, when you're going over documents, there's also, this is where the historical thinking skills come out. This is where AP Euro really, or AP History really differentiates itself from your traditional academic or honors history, is that you then have to explain a document's point of view. Now, who wrote it? Is this a king's document? Is this written by a priest? Is this written by a Protestant or a Catholic? And then if it's written by a Protestant or a Catholic, how does it influence what they say, what they believe, what they do? If it's written by a king, well, what's that tell me about his social standing in the world? What's his belief? How's that influence what he says in this situation? If we're talking about a war, is this a person who ultimately supported the war? Were they against the war? Why were they supporting or against it? How would their personal beliefs get into that? And you need to be able to think about that in terms of the documents. And when you look at a DBQ, another thing to stop and think about for a moment is when you wrote DBQs in your AP history classes, how often was content an important factor in writing those? How much of it was content-based based on what I learned in class versus how much of it was how well can I think about the documents that I've been given right now? They're supposed to give us another rubric, but I'm just going to scroll really quickly down to the rubric for a DBQ. And remember, this is everything I'm showing you right now is, if you Google the AP European History course and exam description, this is all in that file. So remember, thesis and context. I'm not going to talk too much about that. I already talked about contextualization. This is where I think having the themes of the course laid out could start to help you. Because when you get to that complexity point, when you have to do analysis and reasoning, I'm trying to find my spot for complexity. Evidence beyond the documents. Yeah, here we go. 1 point. Demonstrate a complex understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt. This might be where can you connect, is the 30 Years' War similar to wars that came in the future? And this might be a point where could you explain how political reasons were often a cause for any war? This might even be a spot where if you can immediately think of, if you're, for my students, we taught this in the fall semester. I got through all of the units, but this might be a spot where if you can connect that political reasons caused another war in the future. Say any of the wars with King Louis XIV. Say World War I. Say the Crimean War. Could you somehow say that political reasons had an impact there? And could you show that political reasons are often a cause of a war? Could you differentiate it? Could you say that oftentimes in the 30 Years' War is sometimes taught as like the last religious war? Could you show that wars used to be fought for religious purposes, but that changed over time? Depending on what you get, could you then look at one of these themes and show how does this event fit one of these themes that I have laid out on my paper, if my paper was legible? That, I hope, will give you an idea of how I would approach this. Like I said, I would not overwhelm myself with information. Here's why. You've got 45 minutes. And that time is going to fly when you have to write a DBQ. When I gave these in class, when I would give 60 minutes, I mean, there was a few of you guys who could Could bring me a decent DBQ in 45, 50 minutes, but a lot of students were using up all the time. And now the time is pinched even more. So you really, really have to focus on how to use your time. You're going to be doing this online, so it's very well possible. I know there's an AP Euro Reddit group. Reddit was also specifically mentioned by the director of the college board yesterday as like, they know that you guys can jump on this thing and start talking about the test while you're taking the test. While that is possible, while I could start Googling the information that I need really quickly, while I could call up a friend of mine, for you and your friend, let me ask you this. Is that a valid use of 45 minutes? Will the information that you learn going off of these papers, going off of this AP Euro document that they have given you, will taking that time be worth it? I challenge you that it will not. Your time will be much better spent focusing on what you know, trusting yourself, trusting the skill that you have. When I had the teacher who would, or in most cases, it was a professor in college that said you could bring an index card to class, a lot of people stopped trusting themselves, their basic instincts, and suddenly they became about, I've got to check every single thing. It's kind of like when you can use a calculator on a test in elementary school. You knew that 5 plus 5 equaled 10, but when the teacher let you use a calculator, you took a moment to plug it in and just check it. That's what this open note test is going to do to you. It's going to let you have an opportunity to question things that you already know are true. And I challenge that if you get online and you start trying to look up little simple facts, figures, that honestly, this DBQ doesn't really test that. It tests whether or not you can write a thesis and use documents to support your thesis. That's what it's going to challenge. If you did mess up with a little minor, I would say minor factual error, I don't think that's going to hurt you as much as you couldn't write a thesis. That's not going to hurt you nearly as much as could you not properly use a document and source the point of view of that document. That's going to hurt you. That's going to kill your DBQ score. And remember, the DBQ is the heart of what does it mean to be an historian. We didn't call them DBQs when I was taking college courses, but oftentimes when I had to write an essay on whatever the topic may be in college, I had to have sources, and those sources had to back whatever my claim was. This backs up whatever history is about. So another thing too to make sure is set a timer, or if you have somebody around, like I have I have one rule in my house basically, and that is you're not allowed to let the microwave or oven timers go off. My camera lady is laughing. They did say last night that that you are responsible for submitting your DBQ or whatever your AP test is within that time slot they give you. If they see that you download this at 4:06 p.m., then they're expecting it's going to be uploaded at 4:51 p.m. If you don't, they don't accept it. I don't know how tolerant they're going to be on, ooh, you uploaded a minute late, or you uploaded 3 minutes late. I don't know what their toleration is going to be, honestly. If you have a technical glitch, I don't know how friendly they're going to be about just saying, oh, you had a technical glitch, we're going to take your essay 5 minutes later. The point being, make sure you don't let time get away from you. Set a timer on your phone. If I'm sitting at my kitchen table, maybe I set a 45-minute timer at the moment I start this test, maybe a 40-minute timer just to be safe. Actually, I think I'll do that. I'll set the timer about 5 minutes less than what I actually want it to be. And when that timer goes off, I know, okay, I need to finish up whatever this fault is and upload it. They have told us last night, and you should see this in your email, you can do this one of two different ways. You can either type it. Personally, that's the way I'm going to go. I'm going to type this. I'm also now going to contradict myself. The reason I'll type it is just because it ends up being so long and it's going to kill your wrist. For the state of North Carolina, I used to be what was called an NCFE scorer. And so what I did is the state of North Carolina gave NCFEs in a variety of history topics, world history, American 1, American 2, civics and economics. And that test had two, what they call a free response, constructive response questions is what they called it in the state of North Carolina. They paid teachers to grade those. We would get them two different ways. One is if your county gave a paper test, then they scanned your answer form, and all I ever saw was that box that you hand wrote an answer in. It will be a paragraph at most. It was designed to be a shorter version of even SAQ on an AP test. Keep in mind, this is for academic honors. Everybody in the state of North Carolina had to take this test. The other way was it would show up as a test, as just a box that a student had typed in. This is just me speaking pure anecdote. I do not know what the data was adjusting for demographics and whatnot, but I will say students made less careless errors when they hand wrote something. I don't know why this is. Sometimes it's just something as careless as typing. But basic grammar, punctuation, all that stuff always worked out for whatever reason. Just my anecdotal observation was it was always better when people hand wrote them. And I think I don't know why it is people do this, but it seemed to me like there was something about writing something by hand seemed to write more articulately than people typing on a computer. I don't know why the psychology of that is, but I can't say anecdotally that was the case. And I would think that 2 students, all other factors being equal, the slight advantage would be to a student who hand wrote that piece. I've also seen data that says that students, or anybody really, not just students, but people read 25% faster when they're reading something on paper printed versus when they're reading something on a computer screen. I saw that a couple of years ago. Don't ask me to cite the source now. The only reason I would say type this is so you can make quick adjustments when you do realize you make errors. Go back and adjust it so you're not sitting here trying to cross this out and rewrite over to the side and all that like you would be if you were taking this in the 3-hour test window that you traditionally would have. What you might want to do as well in that regard is I would say maybe just have a blank piece of paper to just like sketch out an outline on if you think you can do that in 45 minutes. What I would do over the coming weeks, maybe once a week, is I would practice a DBQ. Set a timer and just see if you can find a practice DBQ online. There's dozens of them online you can find. And see if you can respond in 45 minutes and just see what works for you. Can you handwrite it in 45 minutes and take a picture and upload that? It's extra steps. It's an extra minute or 2 here and there. But it's something you're going to have to do with AP. You will be able to take a picture of your work and upload it online. You will also be able to just type and hit enter, apparently, is what my understanding is. So hopefully this helps. If you need further clarification, if there's a lot of questions, you can drop them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. My students, you can also send me a remind. I'll answer what I can. But I also want to say good luck to everybody out there. Please trust yourself. Trust the skills that you've been taught. Trust the skills that you have for yourself. And may the odds be ever in your favor on May 13th.